live.
Good morning again. Thank you, Neil and Aditi. As you were talking, I was making notes to myself, and I hope that everybody else will be making notes during the conference. There's a lot to learn, and I appreciate your sharing and telling your personal stories. Our next speaker is Dr. Dan Morehead. Dan was at our first conference in San Antonio, and he's back again because he helps us understand mental health in ways that it's easy to understand. Dan is a psychiatrist and neuropsychiatrist. He completed his residency at the Menninger Clinic and has been in private practice for the last 15 years. He's an adjunct professor at Tufts Medical School, Department of Psychiatry. He has served as associate faculty member at the Austin Presbyterian Seminary. And I just found out this week that he's going to begin studies at Harvard Divinity School. Dan's talk is provocatively titled, "The Good News About Mental Illness." It's a title that many people don't expect, but that's why Dan is with us today to share his insight and perspective. Thank you. Dan?
Thank you, Doug. I called Doug the Dynamo, and he is a major force for mental health in this area. So thank you, Doug, for all that you do. Okay, today I'm joining you live from Boston, Massachusetts through the miracles of the internet. And for the tech people, I'm getting feedback back into my earphones. But other than that, I think we have a good connection. And even though I miss being with you in person and seeing your faces, nevertheless, I know that we're connected, and you can know that we're connected because you can email me if you want. danielmoreheadmd@gmail.com. And this is for the purpose of getting copies of the slides. There's too much on a lot of these slides to write down, so I'd rather you just relax and enjoy the talk and watch me squirm if necessary. But don't worry about getting all the information because it's all in the slides and you can have those. And then for questions, Dr. Deuter and I are going to have an Ask the Doc session in the first workshop. So if you have questions, you can come on and ask them there. All right, the good news about mental illness. Well, first of all, it's under the shadow of this pandemic. So I have noticed an unexpected thing in dealing with this pandemic. People ask me as a clinical psychiatrist about people that I see and how are those people doing with the pandemic if they're already dealing with mental illness. And to my surprise, when I think about it, most people I know that have been dealing with mental illness for years are actually doing quite well with the pandemic. And so this puzzled me, and I thought about, okay, what are the similarities between dealing with a pandemic and dealing with mental illness? All right, so number one, in both cases, we're in a crisis. Number two, in both cases, we're socially isolated. We don't have all the support we need. And number three, we don't know how long it'll last or if it will ever end. So there's uncertainty. So crisis, isolation, uncertainty. And I realized my people have been dealing with mental illness. They know how to deal with most parts of this pandemic already, with the hardest parts, and they go about their business. And meanwhile, people who have never had any experience of mental illness are getting just a taste of what it's like to deal with chronic mental illness. And it's not easy, is it? So you don't need me to give a talk to tell you how bad or how hard mental illness is. It's excruciating, it's overwhelming, it is grueling. What we need, all of us, is to encourage each other in the way this conference is designed to do, to bring us together and give us stories of hope. And I promise you, everything I'm going to say today is realistic and scientifically grounded, and it's true and available now. It's not something in the future, it's something that's going on now. Furthermore, I want to assure you that I'm not talking down to any single person that I'm talking to right now. I'm a person who deals with mental illness myself. I deal with it in my family, and I deal with it in my work every day as a clinical psychiatrist. So whatever category you're in watching this, I bet I'm in the same category. All right, no further suspense. What good news? Here we go. If you or someone you love are dealing with mental illness, please know the following. You're not alone. You're not making this up. You're not to blame. There is hope, and we will make it together. And I'm going to show you how every one of these is realistically and scientifically true. Okay, mental illness. We know mental illness is common, and yet mental illness makes you feel alone. I've been there. It makes you feel secretly different from everybody else and left out of everything in life, even the things you're participating in. So we have to address not only the knowledge that mental illness is common, and I know you know, but the feeling that I'm left out, I'm isolated, I'm behind. And I think I can tell you today something a little unexpected, a way in which those who have mental illness, including me, are actually part of a majority in this country, at least in one important way. So let's look at these numbers. All right, the blue graph on the left, my left anyway, lifetime prevalence, mild, moderate, severe, any form of mental illness for any period of time, even a few weeks, 46% of our population have experienced that in some time in life. So that's a little less than half the population. What am I saying about the majority? Well, that 46%, that blue bar, that is a little less than half the population, but that's the population that has already had an experience of mental illness. So if scientifically you extrapolate these numbers to say who will have some form of mental illness at some point in their life, however mild or severe it is, the number goes up to 55%. So it's actually true that those of us who deal with mental illness are in the majority in this country. It's just that the vast majority don't know it yet. But you know it because you're in this conference. Meanwhile, on the other side of the graph, there's a little gray bar, and this is the percentage of the population this year with severe or disabling symptoms. All right, so this is 4 to 6%. And so if you are dealing with severe symptoms, you may not feel like you're in the same boat with everybody else. You may feel really left out. You may feel like you're in a small group. But 6% of the population, that's about 1 in every 20 people in our country has severe, and that means disabling, mental illness. So how much of the population is that? Well, for comparison, 6% of the population is the number of people in this country that are children under the age of 5. So whenever this pandemic ends and you're out and about again and you see a bunch of preschoolers out, just remember, there are as many people with severe mental illness as there are preschoolers in this country. So yes, you're not alone, but I also know if you deal with it, you have self-doubts. You don't judge others, but sometimes you think to yourself, maybe I'm making too big a deal out of this. Maybe it's not that bad. Maybe I'm just being lazy. Maybe I'm just feeling sorry for myself. So let's deal with those doubts and ask ourselves objectively, scientifically, just how bad is mental illness? And the answer is it's very serious. And we know that. And how do we know it? We know it from the scientific research that lets us look at mental illness like any other medical illness. So if you have a mental health condition, well, how bad is that compared to some other kind of medical problem? Well, how do we know if it's bad? The way we know is, number one, it can kill you. So how often does mental illness kill people compared to other illnesses? Well, a straightforward way of measuring that is by suicide. Mental illness is responsible for almost all suicide. And if you look at people ages 10 to 30, so the younger age group, mental illness is the number 2 medical cause of death through suicide. 18 to 65, that's people in their prime adult years. Mental illness is the number 4 cause of death of all medical causes and mental illness kills twice as many people in this country as murder does every year. Then you include the whole population, and as people get older, they die of other things. Suicide goes to number 10 on the list, but as people get older, Alzheimer's dementia also kicks in. So if you put together suicide and Alzheimer's dementia, you will find that for all age groups, mental illness is the number 4 medical cause of death. It is literally serious as a heart attack. Now, the second worst thing it can do is disable you, keep you from functioning at work or home. Turns out that depending on how you calculate it, mental illness is one of the top few causes of disability in this country. One of the standard ways is YLDs, years lost to disability, and you can see on this graph, mental illness causes more years for people spent in disability than any other kind of medical illness. It's deadly. It's disabling, and even if you break it down to single illnesses worldwide, the number 1 cause of medical disability in the world, major depression. Kills you, it disables you, it causes your body to deteriorate or decline. Unfortunately, it's not just in the brain, it's in the whole body. So many studies together have proven that overall mental illness shortens the lifespan by about 10 years. And it does that not mainly through suicide, but by changing our body chemistry such that we're more vulnerable to depression and high blood pressure and heart attacks and other such chronic illnesses. So again, mental illness is serious as a heart attack. I promise you. I may never have met you, but I promise you, you are not making this up. It's bad, real bad. And good news, it's not your fault. Now, again, I know if you're at a conference like this, you know officially it's not your fault, and you don't look at anybody else and judge them and look down on them for their mental illness, but I bet that if you have mental illness or you're a parent of someone in that situation, you doubt yourself and blame yourself. You have regrets. You think about, oh, maybe I shouldn't have drunk so much alcohol in college, or maybe I shouldn't have overworked myself and gotten burned out. And then if you're a parent, the guilt is about 1,000 times worse. You blame yourself. You think, oh, I disciplined them too much. Oh, I didn't discipline them enough. Oh, I neglected them too much. Oh, I hovered over them and I was a helicopter parent. Whatever you did, it was wrong if you're a parent. And I want you to know, if you've ever been blamed by someone else, and even, God forbid, a mental health professional or a family member or a friend, or made to feel inferior or ashamed or put down because you deal with mental illness, I want you to hear from someone else what you know in your heart. That was wrong. You should never, ever be blamed for your or a family member's mental illness. It is not your fault, and I am sorry that it happened. It should not have happened. So how am I so confident that it's not your fault? Because I know that all of us people with goodness in our hearts can think of lots of reasons how we maybe played into our mental illness for ourselves or our children. Well, the reason is I know what causes mental illness, and so do you if you think about it. Genes plus stress. It's very simple. So why aren't you responsible for this? Because you don't get to pick your genes and you don't get to pick your stress. Think about it. Did you pick your parents? Did you pick the color of your eyes? Did you pick whether you were going to turn out tall or short? No. And you don't get to pick your risk of mental illness, and that risk is activated by stress. And yes, we make some stress for ourselves in life, but the major stressors in life are not up to us. Nobody hands you a menu in the morning and says, is today the day you want to lose your mother? Or is today the day you want the boss to yell at you at work? Stress happens and we cope as best we can, but mental illness occurs because of things out of our control. Now, if I have it, I'm responsible to do something about it. We're going to talk about that, but it is not your fault. But you can do something about it, and it's not hopeless. And how hopeless or how hopeful is the situation? Well, I can actually tell you scientifically. I kind of like this. This just came to me last night. I know exactly how much hope you should have about going in for treatment of mental illness. Scientifically speaking, you should have exactly the same hope going in to get mental health disorders treated as you have going into your family doctor for any other kind of medical problem. And we can show this scientifically. There was a big study by a group of very smart researchers who said, let's compare mental health treatments on one side and general medical treatments on the other. Okay, so let's get hundreds of studies and we'll total up all the ones on schizophrenia and depression and obsessive compulsive and post-traumatic stress, and we'll see how effective those medicines are. And then we'll take the ones for general medical conditions like headaches, migraine headache, high blood pressure, diabetes, stomach ulcers, and we'll put all those studies together and we'll say, which kind of treatment is more effective if you're giving somebody a medicine? And the result they got was actually, well, something of an optical illusion in my chart. These two bars are actually statistically the same. The number is slightly different, but it's within the statistical margin of error of the study, meaning when you go into a psychiatrist and you come out with a prescription for your mental health condition, that prescription is just as likely to work for you as when you go to a general medical doctor and come out with a prescription for any common medical problem like stomach ulcers or migraine headaches. And furthermore, we have a lot of these medicines. This is just a list of the number of FDA-approved medications we have for a variety of conditions. Basically, there are a lot, and what you need to know about this is the bar the FDA sets for approving a medicine is pretty high, and it's the same bar that you have to get over to get a medicine approved for any kind of other medical problem. Diabetes, heart attacks, kidney failure, it's the same bar that we have to get over in psychiatry and mental health. We have all these medicines, so I'm going to talk about the biological side of treatment first, then the psychological side, then the spiritual and social side. Look at that, goes right with the conference body, mind, spirit community. So we've already talked about medicines, but some specifics for those of you maybe in a tight situation. Schizophrenia, very hard to treat, and yet there are new and old options which there's a good chance you haven't tried. Caplyta or lumateperone is a new medication, has a better side effect profile and a potential of working through a new mechanism of action, so that's exciting. We have other new medicines for schizophrenia, but the gold standard is an oldie but a goodie, clozapine. Lots of side effects, but I've seen it save people's lives countless times. There's also these long-acting injections, which are shots that you get once every month or two. Yes, you have to give a shot, and nobody likes that. But the good part is you've gotten your medicine for a month or two with no missed doses. And in schizophrenia, even a few missed doses in a month make a difference. So these injections really help people that aren't responding to the regular medicines. Same for major depression. We have a lot of new options that they're working on all the time. You've heard of ketamine. Is it a magical cure that makes all depression go away? No, but it's a powerful new treatment for treatment-resistant depression. And now we have an FDA-approved medicine, S-ketamine, in the nasal spray form that you can get in clinics in every major city in this country now. We have other new medications. We have TMS, transcranial magnetic stimulation. That's where they take powerful magnets and use magnetic fields to treat depression. This is getting better every year as the technology improves. So now we can treat obsessive compulsive disorder this way, and there's studies for post-traumatic stress disorder going on, PTSD. So this is painless, and there's little to no risk in this treatment. So it's a great new high-tech option to have, but we have low-tech biological treatments too. Namely, the low-tech biological treatment of exercise. Completely free if you want it to be proven, scientifically proven, for depression, anxiety, stress, and yes, I've seen a review of 5 studies saying it helps schizophrenia. Those of us who are getting gray hair, and I get new ones every day, it's good for memory, and it's good for helping to delay Alzheimer's dementia, perhaps prevent. The reason exercise works for the brain is it causes the release of nerve growth factors, which are like plant food for the brain, and it makes your neurons grow. exercise literally makes your neurons grow. So I could go on about the biological side, but what about the psychological side, mental treatments? Does psychotherapy work? I bet you know the answer. Now, when I was in medical school back in the last millennium, in the 1990s, there were good, conscientious doctors who thought that talk therapy was made up and not a real medical treatment. It was psychobabble. Well, guess what? Today, we have more than adequate proof that every kind of psychotherapy on this list is effective for a variety of conditions, and we have talk therapies that have been scientifically shown to help every major category of mental illness, even the very hard to treat ones like schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. So virtually everyone can benefit from psychotherapy. I'm of the mind, and I've gotten a lot myself, that everyone can benefit from psychotherapy, even people who've never dealt with mental illness. But if you have mental illness, to me, it's a slam dunk to try to access that if there's any way you can. Best of all, on top of physical and mental treatments, we have spiritual and religious things that people do that actually enhance their physical and mental health in very powerful ways. And we're going to touch on 3: religious service, attendance, meditation, and prayer. All right, religious service attendance. All right, we know this is good for the soul. All religions gather together to support each other, even if these days we're gathering together online. We have thousands of studies that, at least to my great surprise, have shown it's not just good for your eternal soul, it's good for your body and brain and mind. So attending religious services, for instance, can help outcomes in major depression and substance use and suicidality. But look at this on the right side of the screen in this column: better immune function for people that attend religious services regularly, lower stress hormones, decrease mortality, meaning people live longer, all other things being equal, up to 7 years longer in one of the best studies. So remember, mental illness taking 10 years off your life on average? Well, attending religious services once a week or more plus 7, and all these other treatments add in on top of that. Here's an interesting example for religion and mental health. They looked at a group of people that were at high genetic risk for depression, had a lot of severe depression in the family. People who described themselves as religious were 90% less likely to get depressed. And when they looked at their brains, they found thicker gray matter, increased gray matter, which is the part of the brain that has the actual brain cells in it. So all these red areas in these pictures of the brain, all of these had thicker gray matter in the people that describe themselves as more religious. So yes, go home and tell your friends and family today, religion made my brain bigger. And in this case, you have one study at least to back you up. We'll see what more studies show. We have more studies, or almost as many studies for meditation. And please remember that meditation is part of everyone's religious heritage, no matter what your religion is. Sometimes we just think of Buddhist monks meditating. I like how this guy's balancing on the guardrail of the highway. That's pretty good. But meditation is also a part of Western religious traditions like Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. Very powerful for mental and physical health. Look at this: increased thickness of the cortex, increased gray matter for long-term meditators. So that's good for your brain. Lots of good things on the mental health side, like depression and anxiety and chronic pain. But look at this: decreased cellular aging. Everybody with the number of gray hairs that I have gets excited. Do you know how much money people will pay for anti-aging treatments that aren't proven to work? And this one is proven to decrease cellular aging and promote your mental health as well. So pretty good, and it's free. So is prayer. Prayer sometimes feels powerful, sometimes doesn't. But the studies we have, which is less than meditation, but the studies we have say it's very powerful. Depression, anxiety, better overall mental health with more prayer, better relationships. We have spiritual and religious practices that people can do as part of their lives on a regular basis that we know give people benefits. And we can combine those with psychotherapy and medicines and lots of other kinds of effective treatments, exercise too. So I think you get what I'm saying, which is not pray your problems away and ditch all the other treatments. It's let's address the whole person, body, mind, spirit, and then finally community. We will make it together, and we have to make it together because that's the only way we're going to make it. A lot of really interesting and powerful general medical research that's coming out is telling us that social support may be the biggest factor in someone's physical and mental health, bar none. It may be more important than whether you smoke or take your blood pressure medicine or even exercise. Although please exercise, because even a little tiny bit of exercise is proven to help. As far as social support goes, does that mean you have to be the life of the party and in a big group every night, and so we're all doomed with this pandemic? Or if I'm an introvert, I'm doomed? No. Social support just means that if I have stress and problems, I have at least one person I can talk to in an honest way and get support about my stress and problems. And you know what? We all have stress and problems. We all get sick in life. And happily, with mental illness, we have so many resources now, right? This conference, NAMI, National Alliance of Mental Illness, has support groups. Other support groups like Alcoholics Anonymous and Celebrate Recovery. All these things are online now. Your faith community, in my mind, the best support of all. Your therapy, your other treatment. And the fact that right now, if you're a spiritual person, you know and can experience we're already connected. We're already supporting each other, those of us who are joining together and connecting in a conference like this. Bottom line, this is opinion, but in 25 years of psychiatric practice, doing this all day, 5 days a week, there's only two things you need to do to make it, and by make it, I mean recovery. I don't mean cure, I mean having a good life. What two things do you need to do if you're someone who's dealing with mental illness? Number one, don't die. Now, I say this seriously. It's not always under our control. Mental illness kills people just like heart attacks and diabetes kill people. But if you can stay alive, the only other thing you need to do is don't give up. Keep trying to access and try out all these treatments and more that we have available and all these supports. And if you keep trying, they won't all work for you, but you will find what works for you over time, and you will build stability, and you will build recovery, and you will build a good life. It doesn't matter how severe your illness is or how severe your family members is, you can build a good life. It's hard, it takes years, but there are resources. All people have to do is reach out. There are resources regardless of whether you have money or regardless of who you are or where you live. So, thank you all for your kind attention. Bless you. I really, really appreciate your time and this patience. This was the warm-up act, and Doug is going to tell us about the next few steps in the conference.
Very much. Well, that's why we had Dan back this year. I mean, it's always good to hear his insight. He mentioned a couple things. Number one, when he was talking about medications, it reminded me that he and Dr. Melissa Duder, Dr. Duder is from here in San Antonio, they're going to have a workshop session on Ask the Doc. It's always one of the most engaging sessions that we have, and you learn something every time you attend a session like that. You can ask your questions to him. As he was talking about community, I have to give a plug for one of my new favorite movies, Lars and the Real Girl. It is a great movie. It shows what happens when a person who has a mental illness is included in the community, is included in family. And it goes back to what Neil, Sarah, Han, and Aditi were talking about earlier as well. So just a few brief notes before we take our break and move into our afternoon breakout sessions. We're going to take a 20-minute break. That gives everybody a chance to kind of stretch their legs and do whatever they need to do. Please stay on the conference website, and you can select your workshop track and breakout session. We've had questions about, Can I move from session or from track to track? Yes, you can. And I think if you read the chat box, you'll also be able to find out how to do that. The slides that will be on the screen between the morning and afternoon will also give you more information about, again, the CEUs, and we'll also thank many of our sponsors. So with that, we're going to take a break, and we look forward to seeing you back shortly.